At Thanksgiving, I noticed my sister's new designer bag. Then I found out my parents had been spending my inheritance on her for years. So I left a folder on the table. And my mom started screaming. You know that feeling when you walk into your childhood home and everything looks the same, but something's just off. That's exactly how I felt pulling into my parents' driveway last Thanksgiving. Their house still had that same beige siding and the crooked mailbox Dad never bothered fixing. But man, something was different. I grabbed my store-bought pumpkin pie from the passenger seat. Yeah, I know, not homemade, but on a teacher's salary, you do what you can. Walking up those familiar steps, I could already hear laughter coming from inside. The kind of carefree laughter that made my stomach twist a little, if I'm being honest. Mom answered the door with her usual dramatic flair, pulling me into one of those hugs that feels more like a performance than genuine affection. Oh, honey, you made it. Come in, come in. Kate's been telling us the most amazing stories about her trip to Paris. And there she was, my 23-year-old sister Kate, lounging on the couch like she owned the world, casually swinging this gorgeous Gucci bag like it was nothing. No cap, this thing probably cost more than I make in 2 months. She looked up from her phone, a brand new iPhone naturally, and gave me this little wave. Hey sis, love your jacket, she said, eyeing my Target cardigan with barely concealed pity. I forced a smile and set my pie on the kitchen counter, trying not to notice how Dad immediately lit up when Kate started talking about her semester abroad. For real, you'd think she just cured cancer or something. Meanwhile, I'd been teaching 4th graders for 3 years, working my tail off, and could barely afford to keep my ancient Honda Civic running. Dinner was the usual show. Kate dominated the conversation, with stories about the Louvre, shopping on the Champs-Élysées, and her plans for graduate school. Mom and Dad hung on every word like she was telling them the secrets of the universe. And then, Kate giggled, I bought this amazing vintage Chanel jacket from this little boutique. It was only 800 euros. Only 800 euros. I nearly choked on my mashed potatoes. That's like $1,000, thrown around like pocket change. I glanced at Mom and Dad, expecting some kind of parental lecture about responsible spending, but they just beamed with pride. Our little girl has such sophisticated taste, Mom gushed. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking about how I'd asked them for help with my student loans last year and got a lecture about financial responsibility and learning to stand on your own 2 feet. But sure, Kate's $1,000 impulse purchases are totally cool. After dinner, I offered to help clean up, trying to be the good daughter, while Kate disappeared to take a phone call from some guy named Brad. Mom was loading the dishwasher when I casually mentioned how expensive everything sounded. Oh, don't worry about Kate, Mom said, waving her hand dismissively. She's young and experiencing life. Besides, she's been so responsible with her spending money. Spending money. Right. I wanted to ask where exactly this spending money was coming from, but Dad called from the living room about some football game, and the moment passed. Later that evening, I was looking for the bathroom when I accidentally walked into Dad's home office. The door was open, and I could see his desk covered with papers. Normally, I wouldn't snoop, but something caught my eye. My name on a document. I stepped closer, my heart starting to race. It was a bank statement, and there it was in black and white. Transfers from something called Emma Memorial Trust to various accounts. Thousands and thousands of dollars. My hands were literally shaking as I picked up the paper. Emma Memorial Trust. That had to be from Grandma Emma, my dad's mom who passed away 5 years ago. She'd always been closer to me than Kate, probably, because I actually listened to her stories and helped her with groceries instead of just showing up for Christmas. I found more papers underneath. Bank statements going back 3 years. Transfer after transfer, all from this trust account. College tuition payments for Kate, car payments for a BMW I'd never seen Kate drive, travel expenses, shopping receipts that made my stomach drop. $200,000. That's what the original balance showed. 200 grand that was supposed to be mine. I could see my name right there on the trust documents as the sole beneficiary. And my parents had been spending it on Kate like it was their personal piggy bank. Update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading so far. I know this is getting long, but trust me, it gets so much crazier. I'm sitting here 3 months later, still processing everything that happened. Quick question though, if you found out your parents had been stealing your inheritance for years, what would your first move be? Because honestly, I had no clue what I was doing. I stood there in Dad's office for what felt like forever, just staring at these papers. My whole life suddenly made sense in the worst possible way. All those times I'd asked for help and been told I needed to be more independent. All those times Kate got everything handed to her while I worked double shifts at the campus bookstore, just to buy textbooks. Remember when I was applying for colleges and begged them to help with application fees? You're so smart, you'll figure it out, they said. Meanwhile, Kate's entire college experience was apparently funded by money that was legally mine. I carefully put the papers back exactly how I found them and walked to the bathroom on autopilot. In the mirror, I looked like I'd seen a ghost, which, in a way, I guess I had. The ghost of my grandmother's wishes being completely disrespected. The drive home was a blur. I kept thinking about Grandma Emma and how she used to sneak me $20 bills when my parents weren't looking. This is for you, sweetie, she'd whisper. Don't let anyone tell you what to do with it. She must have known something about how my parents operated. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept doing the math in my head. $200,000 could have paid off my student loans, bought me a decent car, maybe even a small house. Instead, I was living in a crappy apartment with a roommate who never cleaned the bathroom, driving a car that made weird noises, and eating ramen for dinner 3 nights a week. The next morning, I called in sick to work, first time in 2 years, and Spent the day researching inheritance law. Turns out what my parents did wasn't just morally wrong, it was straight up illegal. They were trustees, which meant they had a legal obligation to manage that money for my benefit, not use it as their personal Kate fund. I found a lawyer who specialized in estate disputes and made an appointment for the following week. The whole time, I kept second-guessing myself. Was I being dramatic? Was I destroying my family over money? But then I'd remember Kate's casual attitude about her 800-euro jacket, or the way my parents' faces would light up when she walked into a room, and I'd get angry all over again. This wasn't about the money. Well, not entirely. It was about years of being treated like the family afterthought, while my sister got treated like royalty with my inheritance. The lawyer, Mr. Rodriguez, was this no-nonsense guy with kind eyes who listened to my whole story without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and shook his head. "I've seen this before," he said. "Parents who play favorites and think they can just redistribute assets to suit their preferences. The good news is you have a strong case. The bad news is family lawsuits get messy." "How messy?" I asked. "Well, they'll probably try every manipulation tactic in the book. Guilt trips, family loyalty speeches, promises to make it right. They might even turn other family members against you. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about it for a minute. Was I prepared to potentially lose my entire family over this? Then I remembered sitting in my car last month, crying because I couldn't afford to get my brakes fixed, while Kate was probably buying designer shoes in Paris. "Yeah," I said, "I'm prepared." Mr. Rodriguez helped me gather evidence. We requested bank records, tracked down the original trust documents, and built a timeline of every expenditure. The numbers were even worse than I'd thought. Kate's study, abroad semester, $15,000. Her BMW, $32,000. Designer clothes, fancy dinners, spa treatments, it all added up to a lifestyle funded entirely by my inheritance. But here's what really got me. They'd been planning to tell me eventually. I found emails between my parents discussing how to break the news to me after Kate graduated. Their plan was to present it as them investing in Kate's future for the good of the whole family. Like I was supposed to be grateful they'd stolen my money to turn my sister into a spoiled princess. The whole thing made me feel sick, but also liberated. For the first time in years, everything made sense. I wasn't the problem. I wasn't less worthy of love and support. My parents were just terrible people who'd been playing favorites with stolen money. Update. Okay, so the legal stuff is about to get real. But first, anyone else ever had that moment where you realize your entire family dynamic was built on lies? Because wow, that was a trip. Also, spoiler alert, the confrontation at the next family dinner was absolutely wild. Should I have handled it differently? Maybe. Do I regret it? Not even a little bit. I spent weeks preparing for the confrontation. Mr. Rodriguez advised me to try resolving it outside of court first, but I knew my parents well enough to know they'd just deny everything and try to gaslight me into backing down. So I came up with a different plan. Christmas was coming up, and Mom had already invited me to their annual Christmas Eve dinner. The whole extended family would be there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the works. Perfect audience for what I had planned. I put together a folder with copies of everything. The trust documents, bank statements, receipts for Kate's expenses, even some of those emails I'd found. Everything organized with little sticky notes and highlighted sections like I was grading the world's most expensive homework assignment. The day of the dinner, I showed up early to help with preparations. Kate was already there, naturally, wearing what looked like a brand new designer dress and showing off yet another piece of jewelry to our cousin Sarah. "It's from Tiffany," she was saying. "I saw it in the window in New York and just had to have it." I bit my tongue and kept stirring the gravy. Just a few more hours. Dinner went exactly as expected. Kate held court with stories about her internship at some fancy marketing firm in Manhattan, her new apartment in Brooklyn, her plans for graduate school at Columbia. Everyone oohed and awed at the appropriate moments. We're so proud of both. "Our girls," Mom announced to the table. "Kate's accomplishing so much, and Emma's, well, she's doing her best as a teacher." Doing my best. Right. I smiled and nodded while internally screaming. After dinner, when everyone was settling in the living room with coffee and dessert, I quietly placed my folder on the coffee table and sat back down. "What's that, honey?" Mom asked, eyeing the folder suspiciously. "Oh, just some papers I wanted everyone to see," I said casually. "Family stuff. You can look at it in a minute." But Mom, being Mom, couldn't wait. She reached for the folder immediately and opened it. I watched her face go from curious to confused to absolutely pale as she saw the first document, Grandma Emma's trust paperwork with my name clearly listed as the sole beneficiary. "What is this?" she whispered. "Why don't you read it out loud?" "Mom," I suggested sweetly. "I think everyone would find it interesting." The room went quiet. Dad looked over Mom's shoulder, and I watched his expression change from confusion to panic. Kate, still oblivious, was asking what was wrong. "This is..." Mom started, then stopped. Her hands were literally shaking. "This is some kind of mistake." "Is it?" I stood up, addressing the room like I was giving a lesson to my fourth graders. "Because those bank statements show pretty clearly where Grandma's money went. Kate's college tuition, her car, her trips, her shopping sprees, all paid for with the inheritance Grandma left specifically for me." The room exploded. Aunt Linda started asking questions, Uncle Mike was demanding explanations, and Kate finally realized what was happening. "Wait, what?" Kate looked back and forth between me and our parents. "What inheritance? What are you talking about?" "The inheritance Grandma left me," I said, staying calm even though my heart was racing. $200,000 that Mom and Dad have been spending on you for the past 3 years. Dad finally found his voice. Now wait just a minute. Emma, you're taking this all wrong. We were managing that money for the family's benefit. Managing it? I laughed, but not in a funny way. Is that what you call buying Kate a BMW and funding her European vacation? Because I'm pretty sure that's called theft. Kate was staring at the bank statements now, her face getting redder by the minute. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know, I said. Why would they tell you where the money was really coming from? Much easier to let you think you deserved it all while I struggled to pay my student loans. Mom started crying, big, dramatic tears that she probably thought would make me back down. Emma, you're destroying this family. We only wanted what was best for everyone. What was best for everyone, or what was best for Kate? I looked around the room at my relatives, who were all staring in shock. How many times did I ask for help over the years? How many times was I told I needed to be more independent, more responsible? And the whole time, you were spending my inheritance on designer bags and European vacations. Uncle Mike cleared his throat. Hold on, let me get this straight. Emma's grandmother left her money specifically, and you've been spending it on Kate instead? It's not that simple, Dad said, but his voice sounded defeated. Actually, it is that simple, I said, pulling out another paper. I've already consulted with a lawyer. What you did is called breach of fiduciary duty, and it's illegal. You're going to pay back every penny plus interest and legal fees. The room was dead silent, except for Mom's sniffling. Kate looked like she was going to be sick. Emma, please, she said quietly. I never asked for any of this. I didn't know. You never asked, but you sure didn't question it either, I replied. Did you ever wonder how 2 middle-class parents could afford to fund your lifestyle while your sister was eating ramen every night? I picked up my purse and headed for the door. You'll be hearing from my lawyer, I said to my parents. Merry Christmas. Update. Well, that escalated quickly. The fallout from that dinner was absolutely insane. I'm not gonna lie, there were times I wondered if I'd made a huge mistake, but 3 months later, sitting in my own house, yes, I bought a house. I can honestly say it was the best decision I ever made. The legal battle got messy, but you'll never guess how it all ended up. The next few weeks were absolutely brutal. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Mom, Dad, Kate, various relatives who'd been at dinner, everyone wanting to talk and work things out. I ignored most of the calls, but I did listen to a few voicemails just to see what kind of spin they were. Trying to put on things. Mom's voicemails were pure manipulation. Emma, honey, you're breaking my heart. Family is more important than money. Grandma would be so disappointed in how you're acting. Dad's were more aggressive. You're being ridiculous, Emma. We raised you better than this. Call me back so we can discuss this like adults. Kate's were just pathetic. Emma, please call me back. I'm so confused. I never meant for any of this to happen. I love you. The only one I actually called back was Kate, and that conversation was something else. I don't understand, she kept saying. Why didn't Grandma leave money for both of us? Because she barely knew you, I said, probably harsher than I should have. You visited her maybe twice a year and only on holidays. I was there every weekend, helping with groceries, listening to her stories, actually spending time with her. But that's not fair. Fair? I almost laughed. Kate, you've had everything handed to you your entire life. Private dance lessons, designer clothes, new cars, college paid for, and now graduate school. What exactly hasn't been fair about your life? She didn't have an answer for that. Mr. Rodriguez moved fast with the legal stuff. Within a week, my parents received an official demand letter requiring them to return all the misappropriated funds, plus interest. The total came to just over $230,000. Dad called me directly after getting the letter, and for the first time in my life, I heard genuine panic in his voice. Emma, be reasonable. We don't have that kind of money just sitting around. Kate's tuition, the house payments, our retirement savings. We can't just write you a check for $200,000. Should have thought about that before. You spent my inheritance, I said. But we're family. Surely we can work something out. We were family when I was asking for help with college applications. We were family when I needed a cosigner for my student loans. We were family when my car broke down and I had to choose between fixing it and paying rent. But apparently, family only mattered when it came to spoiling Kate. I hung up on him. The next phase was even messier. My parents started a whisper campaign with the extended family, trying to paint me as greedy and ungrateful. Some of my aunts and uncles bought into it, sending me disappointed texts about how money shouldn't come between family, but others saw right through the BS. Aunt Linda called me one evening, furious. I can't believe what they did to you, she said. Your grandmother specifically wanted you to have that money and they just stole it. There's no other word for it. Thank you, I said, nearly crying with relief. I was starting to think I was losing my mind. You're not. What they did was wrong, and frankly, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. The court proceedings took about 2 months. My parents' lawyer tried to argue that they'd been acting in the family's best interest and that the money had been invested in Kate's education. Mr. Rodriguez demolished that argument pretty quickly by pointing out that European vacations and designer handbags aren't exactly educational expenses. Kate had to testify about all the money she'd received, and watching her list everything out loud was surreal. She'd received more in gifts over 3 years than I'd made in salary during the same period. The judge was not amused by my parents' excuses. The trust was clear, he said. The beneficiary was Emma, not the entire family. The trustees had no authority to redirect these funds for any purpose other than Emma's benefit. My parents were ordered to repay the full amount plus court costs and attorney fees. They had 60 days to come up with the money or face asset seizure. That's when things got really interesting. Turns out, my parents had been living beyond their means for years, using my inheritance to fund not just Kate's lifestyle, but their own. When they couldn't come up with the money, they had to start selling stuff. Dad's classic Mustang, gone. Mom's jewelry collection, gone. They had to take out a second mortgage on the house and liquidate most of their retirement savings. Kate's fancy lifestyle collapsed overnight. No more graduate school at Columbia. She ended up at a state school with student loans like a normal person. The BMW got repossessed, and she moved back in with our parents to save money. She got a job at a local boutique, making $12 an hour. The best part? Some of her friends started asking questions when her lifestyle suddenly changed, so dramatically. Word got around about what had happened, and Kate became known as the girl whose parents stole her sister's inheritance to fund her fake rich girl act. Meanwhile, I was living my best life. With the settlement money, I bought a cute little house about 20 minutes from my school. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I also started a small tutoring business on the weekends, and I'm saving up to maybe open my own learning center someday. I got a new car, nothing crazy, just a reliable Honda that doesn't make weird noises. I paid off my student loans completely, and for the first time in my adult life, I'm not stressed about money. The tutoring business has been amazing. I work with kids who need extra help in reading and math, and their parents are so grateful. One mom told me I'm a godsend, and honestly, that felt better than any designer bag ever could. About 6 months after everything went down, I ran into Kate at the grocery store. She looked different, tired, maybe. Her hair wasn't perfectly styled, and she was wearing clothes from Target instead of whatever expensive boutique she used to shop at. "Emma," she said quietly, "how are you?" "I'm good," I said, and I meant it. "Really good," she nodded, looking uncomfortable. I wanted to apologize for everything. I really didn't know about the inheritance, but I should have questioned where all the money was coming from. It wasn't fair to you. It was the first genuine thing she'd said to me in years. I appreciate that, I said. "Do you think, could we maybe get coffee sometime? I know I have no right to ask, but I miss you." I thought about it for a second. "Maybe," I said, "but things are different now. I'm not the same person who used to let everyone walk all over her." "I know," she said, "and honestly, I'm glad. You deserved better. We haven't had that coffee yet, but maybe someday we will, or maybe we won't. Either way, I'm okay with it. My parents still haven't reached out to apologize. They're too proud, I guess, or maybe they still think they were in the right somehow. I heard through the family grapevine that they're struggling financially, which honestly doesn't break my heart. They made their choices. I've built a new life for myself, surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not what I can do for them. My students adore me, my tutoring clients recommend me to their friends, and I'm genuinely happy for the first time in years. Sometimes I think about Grandma Emma and what she'd think about everything that happened. I like to believe she'd be proud of me for standing up for myself and not letting anyone take advantage of me anymore. She always said I was stronger than I knew. She was right. The money was never really about the money, you know. It was about respect, fairness, and finally, getting what was rightfully mine. But more than that, it was about learning that I deserve to be treated with dignity and kindness, not just by my family, but by everyone in my life. And you know what? That lesson was worth every uncomfortable conversation, every family relationship that got damaged, and every sleepless night during the legal battle. I'm not the family scapegoat anymore. I'm not the one who gets ignored while everyone else gets celebrated. I'm just me, a good teacher, a kind person, and someone who finally learned to stand up for herself. And honestly, that feels pretty amazing. These days, when people ask me about family drama, I just shrug and say that sometimes you have to fight for what's yours. Not everyone understands that, but the people who matter do. My house has a little garden in the back where I grow tomatoes and herbs. Sometimes I sit out there in the evenings with a cup of tea, looking at my mortgage papers on the kitchen table and my car keys hanging by the door, and I just feel grateful. Grateful that I found those papers in Dad's office. Grateful that I had the courage to fight back. Grateful that I learned the difference between being family and being treated like family. Most of all, I'm grateful that I finally learned I'm worth fighting for.